Okay, and as KBEV would say, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're on, Mrs. Marcus.
Okay, thank you. This is April 8th, and I'm calling the open session for the special school board meeting on April 8th, 2021, and it's now 6:29. I'd like to, first of all, wonder if everybody is in session, is in Beverly Hills. Are we all here in Beverly Hills, or anybody that's reporting from outside of Beverly Hills?
Yeah, we're all here.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna do the flag salute. I have brought my little flag forward here for you all to see. So I will lead the flag salute. So if you please all stand, we'll start the flag salute. Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under
God,
indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay,
So moved.
okay, motion to approve the agenda by Noah, seconded by Tristan. Are there any comments from the public this evening, Dr. Breggy?
There were none.
Okay, we will move on to the next order of business, discussion.
We have to vote on the agenda. We didn't take the vote.
Okay. All for the motion of the agenda, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next up, order of business is the discussion and approval of the proposed whatever. So I believe this was brought by Tristan. She wants to make a comment. Or now let's, do I have a motion first? This discussion. We have to have a motion and then we can go into discussion, I think.
I'll make a motion for the approval of the revision to the Finance Committee guidelines.
I'll second.
Okay, Noah's motion is to approve the guidelines, and Tristan has seconded the motion. Okay, let's have a discussion now, and I'll start with Amanda.
Well, can I introduce
Yeah,
it since I asked for it
Yeah.
to be on the agenda?
Yeah, start,
Okay.
Ms. Schumann.
Thanks. So for the last 2 years, we've made an effort to update bylaws, administrative regulations, and guidelines to either reflect our practices or to change our practices to reflect our bylaws, administrative regulations, and guidelines. So this is an effort to try to align the practice with what the actual guideline says. Since we have 2 new members that need to be appointed to the Finance Committee, as was discussed in the Finance Committee in January and then in the board meeting in February, I just wanted to take this opportunity to update this portion of the guidelines to reflect what past practice has been, and that is reflected in the change that I've proposed.
Okay, thank you. Amanda.
Yeah, I think the rationale and some of the things that come to mind is that I think that since, we're staggered and that in a year and a half, some of us will be exiting, I think it sounds to me to be equitable if there's an equal opportunity for people to appoint members for the Finance Committee. I understand there's a procedure to address an existing bylaw, but that's sort of the rationale that comes to mind for me.
Okay, thank you. Noah.
Thank you. I'm not sure the reason this is coming up now. We had gotten a communique from Wade's office about the appointees in a board connection, and it seems to be in line with the proposed language for the revision. So, which is correct. That's how it's been done. Before I got here, since I've been here, it's always gone down the line in order of elected officials. So I have no trouble supporting this proposed language, which falls in line with practice.
But it doesn't fall in. Okay, never mind. Okay. All right.
Okay, I'm sorry, Michelle. What would you say?
Well, I'm not sure that it falls in line with practice because that was not the way it has been to go down the line, because I believe that Mr. Spitz was at the end of the line when he made his suggestion, and I was sitting in the third spot at the time, so it did not go down the line at that time. So I just wanted to clarify that with you. It did not, it has been according to the procedure that's listed in the bylaws or in the guidelines, that did not hold true. Okay, so I'm just pointing that out.
Okay, my recollection is that Mr. Spitz had asked me for the appointment at that time because I had already appointed. There was previously somebody that I had appointed, and before it came around during my second term, it was Mel's, first term or return term, and he had asked me for the appointment. So that's.
And
that's
you were
how
president at that time.
Right, that's how I recall.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's how I recall
that-
it down, but that's.
That,
neither
I'm
here-
just saying that that was not, as I understood, but that's okay, we can go
Okay.
on, okay.
Okay.
Tristan,
That's-
Mrs. Wells would like to speak last, so Tristan, you're next.
Oh, I think I've said what I what I need to. I think we've prioritized getting our bylaws, guidelines, and administrative regulations updated to reflect either our current practice or updated our practice to reflect the bylaws, administrative regulations, and guidelines. And in the last 2 years, we've done this for the bylaw related to the Independent Learning Center. We've done it for graduation requirements. We've done it for animals on campus for non-instructional purposes. We've even revised the board bylaw that addresses board bylaws. So I think it's in line with the work that we've done so far. I know that there's other bylaws and administrative regulations that we've looked at going forward to address and update. And I think this is a good time to do this. And it's good to be thorough.
Okay, Mrs. Wells?
Well, I'm concerned and I'm disappointed to see this proposed revision to the Finance Committee guidelines on today's agenda. We were asked to convene for a special meeting to discuss the critical issues around going back to school, and I don't see why this item had to be on the agenda for today, especially when 1 month ago at the regular board meeting, the board approved the revised Finance Committee guidelines without objection. And I do believe now that it's because Mrs. Walker-Schuman is not getting what she wants right now, which is to appoint the next Finance Committee member. And that so because of that, she along with Dr. Stern are proposing to change the Finance Committee guidelines, which will enable her to appoint the person of her choosing. It seems to me that this is not about equity at all or what's best for the district, but instead it is about power and selfish interests. It is clear that the majority of the board has already been lobbied, likely in violation of the Brown Act, to vote in favor of this change. And from a governance and from a board operation standpoint, we need to have consistency. We cannot 1 month later change the rules because somebody doesn't get what they want. The existing guidelines state clearly that the board president appoints or delegates the appointment to replace the Finance Committee members when the board member who had made the original appointment no longer sits on the board. This is fair. It's fair because we rotate the president. So each president will have an influence on the committee structure. President Marcus has already delegated the appointment of the Finance Committee to me. And I've selected an exceptionally well-qualified next member for the committee, someone who will be an incredible asset to the Finance Committee and to the district. He's an MBA from Harvard, he has a JD from Yale, and he currently works in asset capital management. In addition, he taught for Teach for America for 2 years in public school. He grew up in Beverly Hills, and he lives in Beverly Hills now, and he's willing to donate his time to our district and to our community. I cannot think of a reason that a board member would object to this appointment or to go to such extremes to avoid as evidenced by this proposed revision unless the motives are purely personal and unrelated to what's best to our community and for our children. This to me is bad practice. Changing the guidelines after they've been approved and an appointment has been made creates an uncertain environment for the board members to operate, and that ultimately is detrimental to this board. This is not unlike what happened when Board President Marcus attempted to appoint liaisons to the Facilities Committee. There, in order to get what they wanted, Mr. Margot and Mrs. Walker-Schuman conveniently changed their reference to what has only been known as a board facility subcommittee since its inception to calling it now a working committee, all to avoid President Marcus's attendance at a meeting and for the preparation of minutes to be shared with the board. They went so far as to say it is not a weekly standing committee when the facts so overwhelmingly show otherwise. In the short time that I've been on this board, I've experienced this repeatedly. I ran for this office to be on a team, to work with my fellow board members, and to build consensus, all to serve the interests of our community and our parents and teachers, and most importantly, for our children. Until we can work together effectively, I will continue to voice my concerns. I will point out how the operations of the board are being manipulated for self-interest and to fight for what serves for our constituents and our stakeholders as opposed to ourselves. Because of that, I am voting no on this provision, and I do want my statement to be included with the meeting minutes from this meeting, and I want it to be on the record.
Thank
That's
you.
all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, I would like now to make a statement also. This is clearly a selfish act, specifically from Mrs. Walker-Schuman, to request a change to the guidelines in selecting a new member to the Finance Committee. The motivation for this is crystal clear. It is to ensure that Mrs. Walker-Schuman will be able to appoint someone of her choosing. It appears Mrs. Walker-Schuman will stop at nothing to get what she wants. It comes as no surprise that Mrs. Walker-Schuman mentions only the Finance Committee when the Facilities and Construction Committee uses the exact same guidelines to select new members. Mrs. Walker-Schuman's actions speak for itself. Her true intent is to make sure that I, as the board president, does not get to appoint another board member to make the appointment. Up to now, the method that the board has used has worked efficiently, and I see no reason to change it at the 0 hour. Again, the only reason for changing this long-standing board policy, especially and in layman's terms, is so Tristan will get what she wants. If Ms. Walker-Schuman thought for a minute that I would ask her to make this appointment, this action would probably not be before the board. Just because Mrs. Walker-Schuman might not get a chance to appoint someone is not a valid reason to change this board's established guidelines. Mrs. Walker-Schuman states that the change will ensure all members will get a chance to appoint someone. This is misleading and simply not true. Mrs. Walker-Schuman's action is self-serving, and both she and any other fellow members of the board voting in line with her at her specific request is based on self-interest and not in the best interest of the Beverly Hills Unified School District. And I too will make sure that this is on the record. Thank you.
That was very interesting speeches. Let me just
Excuse me, you are out
respond.
of order. You are out of order.
I'm not out of order.
Yes, you are.
You're
You
allowed
had
to
your
speak
chance.
on an item until it's
Oh,
taken
you
a
had your
vote,
chance
and we're not done.
No.
Nope.
I'm going to call
No.
for the question.
You do not get to do that. I am not
Yes, I
done.
do.
The board bylaws say that every board member gets to have their
You
say.
had your chance.
I am
I went
not
through it
finished.
and you didn't speak.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Marcus,
No,
but
you're
that's
wrong.
not
I'm
accurate.
sorry. I'm going
It
to
is
call for the
incredibly offensive
No.
that an accusation would be made
Well,
that any board members on this
sorry.
board
Call for the
violated
vote,
the
please,
Brown Act. There
Dr.
is no
Becky.
evidence
Call
of
for the
that.
vote,
That is
please.
absolutely inappropriate.
No,
And that actually is really terrible governance.
no, I'm
I
sorry.
would like to make a few points. I have served
Oh,
on
I'm
the
sorry.
Finance Committee
I-
for 2 years.
No,
And
I'll
during
make a
that
question,
time, not a
Dr. Becky,
single
please.
time, not a one meeting did you come to or attend, not a single time did you ask for an update. Neither did any of the prior board presidents. And I have served, I would like to know, can you tell me, Mrs. Marcus, what CADI
I
is?
want to call for the
I would like to know if you
I'm
can tell
sorry.
me, what
No,
is GASB
sorry.
75?
You're out of order.
I would like to make it
Sorry.
a point that when you don't understand what the work is that happens on the committee, that it's really incredibly
only
offensive
interested-
to
this
think
is
that
only
you should
has to do
be able to
now with
change who
the
exactly gets to
guidelines.
appoint
I'm sorry.
someone.
You're out of, you're.
There is nothing out of order about having a conversation about that, what I asked to put on the agenda. And
You had
just
a
for the
chance,
record,
but
since we are going to have the record reflect, I will also be making a motion to put on the agenda, an upcoming agenda, a change to the Facilities Committee in this regard. In addition to which, and I'd also like to highlight this for the Facilities Committee, Mrs. Marcus, you have had the ability to add to any agenda for any meeting that we have had an update, and you have not done that. We agreed to form that committee and to make appointments, and you also have not done that. We are now 2 months later. I'm ready to make my appointment. Why have we not done that yet?
That-
You
I'm not
can't
talking-
simply
that
throw
is
around
not
these
on the schedule. You are
accusations
on
and
the
create
order.
this kind of
Not
drama.
on
It's
the schedule right now.
unnecessary.
You are
It's
actually
unnecessary.
talking about
And
another
you want to
subject.
know something? Good governance. Maybe you need to pay
Governance
attention
would
to
have been
the
able
one
to
that we
look
have
at-
coming up. And
Just
Mrs.
good
Wells, I would
governance
suggest
would have
you
followed
also
the
pay attention
policies.
to this, because we have a board bylaw,
just wanna get your way.
9271, that says
Yeah,
each
you're
board member
bullying.
is responsible
Make
to
sure
all
that you get your
residents
way.
of
Okay,
the
that's
district
it.
and not solely those who elected him or her, nor solely to any organization to which he or she belongs or which may have supported his or her election. And the unfortunate truth here is that there were promises made during the campaign, not only Mrs. Marcus, but also Mrs. Wells, that simply cannot be made or fulfilled by changing this
I'm not changing
guideline.
anything. I'm asking that we.
I have no
get-
intent
No,
of
you
changing
told
that
us, you
guideline.
told us that you
What?
were going to be, you told us that you were going to be independent, Mrs. Marcus, and that is
I am
clearly not
independent.
the case.
I am independent. I'm
No,
extremely
you are
independent.
being
I'm voting.
badly advised, and you're taking and following that bad advice, and that's
I'm not
leading to
taking
this
anybody's advice
situation.
but the way I
I'd
feel
like to
about it.
say point
I'm
of order
trying to
here. I don't
improve my-
think we are on the agenda topic.
Yeah, you're not on.
The agenda topic is
topic.
making the change in the bylaw.
Well, that you weren't discussing.
And to be frank, the responses that you gave would not qualify under this agenda item either.
Excuse me, they were my rebuttal to what I feel was the reason for you making the change. So therefore, I accept the fact that we will not call for the question.
Great.
Are
Shall we have a
going-
roll call
we
vote,
going
or are we
around-
doing?
Are we going around the horseshoe again?
You want to go around again? I will be happy to go around one more time, but I think we've all said what we want to say. You said you have something else to say. We did go.
Well,
around.
I would defer to Amanda first, but I would like to address accusations that were levied in the comments.
Amanda?
Well, address those comments, Noah.
First of all,
Are you passing your turn to speak, Amanda?
Yeah, I'm asking him what,
All right.
there was a comment made about potentially violating the Brown Act because Tristan had contacted more than 2 board members regarding this. Tristan never contacted me regarding this issue at all. The first I saw of it was on the agenda with the revision when the agenda was
I
posted.
will clarify, she confronted me. She spoke to me. Then she spoke to Amanda.
I asked you
Okay.
if the rumor was true. I didn't ask you anything else
And then-
about, I
So
didn't
that's-
ask you anything about changing a
So-
guideline, Mrs. Marcus. That is absolutely something
You
different.
asked, Then you started to explain what you wanted. Excuse me, you spoke.
No,
about
I
it.
explained to you why I didn't think it was fair.
No, well, you spoke about it. That's good enough.
We should remember, colleagues, that we are on the record right now. We're being recorded, and it's very, very detrimental to throw out comments about Brown Act violations on a publicly recorded meeting. That's a liability. So we need to continue to refrain from doing that.
Especially when
The
it's
second
not
thing
true.
is President Marcus, the history of the appointments to this committee, if you go back into the records, at least a decade, you will see that it followed elected positions. It was never the president's job to appoint those board members. It went in order. So I implore you to go back and look at those to confirm that that's how the board had handled it since before my time when I got on and to continuing to this day.
Only
So-
going by what's on the guideline. Okay, that's the guideline.
I'm saying that either if the guidelines were here for the last 10 years, the board president never followed the guidelines. They used the elected order to determine that. So the president then just deferred to the elected order to pick that. It was never just a choice. So I'm just asking if you wanted to go back and look at who was elected when, the order that they appointed, it would follow that particular thing. So what we're voting for today is completely within the practice, regardless of Mrs. Walker-Schuman or not, or Mrs. Wells. It's part of the practice that this board has done for at least a decade, if not longer. So that's my comment.
That's a practice, but it was not the way it was listed in.
I understand that, and that's why we're taking the practice and we're making it protocol as opposed to.
It's a bit late now.
but Noah, you were
It's
saying.
not too late. I disagree. There are often
I know
times
it's
where we
too late.
bring
It
where we
comes up
bring
at the very-
bylaws and
but it comes
administrative
up at the very
regulations.
minute that this happened. This
We
just
bring
happened.
bylaws and administrative regulations to the board, we fix them, we amend them, and then sometimes a week or two, a meeting or two later, we have to do it again because something else comes up that we didn't pay attention. So nothing is out of the ordinary from what we're doing tonight. And I understand what you're saying, but it's the way that the practice has been done. And I just wanted to put that on the record. So thank you.
And Noah, for decades or for the last, since you've been on the board, that is how it is taken place?
Yes, that's how it's been done.
So why is it when did it actually diverge from how it is in the bylaw?
It would have been before I got here. I don't know when that particular bylaw was originally adopted by the board or adopted, excuse me, that we would have to look into the history of that. But I could tell you from when I got here, when it was Jake and Brian and Lisa and Louis and myself, Howard, all of those, and then Isabel and Mel, they all got down the line. They all made their appointees.
Right.
So.
And that's why the staff came with their weighed in on that and said the next two up are Mrs.
Rochelle
Marcus and
Tristan,
Mrs. Walker.
Because that's why
That's right.
it has been done that.
I'd like to say something. I don't think that it's actually true in the sense we just approved these new revised guidelines. We just approved the facilities guidelines, and there were changes that were made to that. At that point, you could have made that clarification. I don't appreciate the fact that you twist what happened historically to work and how you want to make your argument. For example, the facility subcommittee has always been appointed by the president.
This is not a conversation about
liaison.
facilities. What is on the agenda?
Tristan,
No.
and please don't
The facilities
interrupt me.
subcommittee is not on the agenda.
So to say that this is the way it's always been done, you can't say it in one situation and now switch it and say it in another. When we just approved the board finance committee guidelines, it's not like something that we're.
And this was a change
table.
that I made actually in the facilities committee guidelines. This was a change that I made in the changes that I turned in. So it was already, if you go back and look at the changes I made in the Google document, it was reflected there.
I'm referencing going back historically and using the history and what has been the practice as the justification for what something should be now when it is written differently in the guidelines. I disagree with that.
That's the board prerogative. The board gives and the board takes away. This is the decision that the board gets to make. Past precedent is what should direct and why we should align.
Rochelle has delegated that to me,
exactly.
and I have already spoken with someone and appointed them. So now you're suggesting
That doesn't mean anything. That's not an
It
official.
doesn't.
Doesn't happen when you're in an official capacity.
It does
That was
mean-
not done in a board meeting.
It's not done in a board meeting. Historically, if you want to go
Making an
back and
appointment
look, it
happens
has
in a
not been
board
done in a
meeting.
board meeting. Well, I'd
It
like you
doesn't
to show an
require a vote,
example.
but it is done in a board
It
meeting.
has not been done in a board meeting, and I can tell you when Elliot Finkel was appointed, it was not done as such, and it has not been the case. So if you want to use your
was
argument
discussed
of
in the
how it's
board
been
meeting.
done historically, that's not how it's been done.
Okay, well, the action item on the
Elliot was
agenda is to
appointed-
edit.
Oh, sorry, Elliot was appointed by Mrs. Hacker, correct?
My point is, it was simply put on the agenda
Yes.
as an acknowledgement that he had been appointed.
Right. We don't vote for the appointments. It's just announced.
Right.
Once again, we're not twisting history here. I'm just bringing it up. And I would also ask that President Marcus, if Mrs. Wells has somebody that she wants to appoint, is there any reason why then we couldn't appoint 3 people to the Finance Committee? Did anybody ask that question? Is there a limit on the number of people that have to be on the committee?
I think it
You're
says
you're
5 in
muted.
the guidelines, but also if Mrs. Wells wants to appoint someone, Rochelle can give her turn the same way that you did for Mr. Spitz.
I don't think that's your choice, Tristan.
I'm
No,
not
it's
saying
not,
it's
but
my choice. It's just a suggestion and also
I'm just
history.
Making the suggestion if there's a maximum or minimum of people.
There is. So in the
There is?
bylaws, it's 5 appointees from 5 board members.
It's one of the first lines.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up.
So this person sounds terrific, Mary. I think it would be lovely if Rochelle would like to give her appointment to you. I'm sure this person could contribute greatly. And then we have no issue, right?
By the way,
To give
colleagues,
your appointment.
colleagues,
I have
it
someone in mind
specifically
already.
says 5 members shall serve as board appointees.
Correct.
I don't see where it says only 5 can serve at a time. There's no language in there that prevents me or prevents us from doing what I'm suggesting. If you look at the actual language, I quote, 5 members shall serve as board appointees. That would be in line because Mary's appointee would be a board appointee. So all you wouldn't need to do is when the next vacancy comes up, you don't have to fill it because you'll already have somebody on there. Just making a suggestion, it's being diplomatic. So,
But by that time, wouldn't there be a whole new shift? Because in a year and a half, there will be outgoing board members.
The term is longer for,
That works.
right, the finance.
Well, the
committee
term
stays
is 2
6
years, but there's
up
still
to
people that
3
are going to
renewals.
be,
Well, the
but
term
there's
is
still
actually
people
they
that are
can
going to
repeat-
be timing out in the next 2 years.
No, but Tristan, they
one.
can go for 6 years. They can go for
No.
3
Excuse
successive
me,
terms.
it is for 2 years, and the board decides if they stay on for the 3 different successive terms.
Well, at this point, they have always gone on because there's never been an issue.
Is that precedent or is that in the guideline?
I think it says that they can go for 3.
They shall
It
serve no
says
more
the
than 3.
2-year terms.
No, 3.
Right,
terms.
it says
No, it's 2-year terms up to 3 2-year terms.
up to 3
Which
2-year
is an
terms they
option.
can serve. Yeah, but it doesn't say it's up to board decision. They could
It
say,
doesn't.
they
It
could,
doesn't say that it isn't up to board decision.
yeah, I
It
know.
is
but-
silent on that. So if
I'm
we're going
sorry,
by,
but just
again,
saying
past
it doesn't
history,
say it does. It doesn't say it is or it isn't. It only says 5. It doesn't say more than 5. Are we going to rewrite the board guidelines right now for the finance committee? Is that what this discussion has become?
No,
well, I
there's a
think
specific
actually
motion on the floor.
procedurally, the way it works is that I made a recommendation for a proposal, we vote on the proposal. If there are additional changes that want to be made, they need to be made separately in the form of a proposal, and then they go on the agenda and we discuss them then.
Okay, I'm going to give you a chance to speak now, Tristan. Mary, excuse me, are you finished right now? I
I'm
don't-
finished, thank you.
Tristan, it's your turn.
Yeah, I've said everything that I have to say. I feel like this is assault. It clearly was coordinated. I don't appreciate the accusations. I think that it's terrible for governance. This isn't completely in line with the effort to make our procedures and our protocol match what our practice is. So I think talk about making something personal, but it has
I'm
been
gonna
made
say right
very
now, this was
personal.
not coordinated at all. I did not talk to Rochelle about this. I don't know what Rochelle was planning to do. I only asked Rochelle if I could be at the end today. That's what I asked.
Well,
So
you two
I-
clearly
that-
talked about delegating a choice, which was not discussed with the whole board, or the whole board was not.
No, it was
informed. So you
within
clearly
Rochelle-
talked about it.
Following, Tristan, that is untrue. Following the guidelines that were approved by the board on the 9th, it is Rochelle who then determines who she wants to delegate that to. So no, that's not out of line at all. That's exactly
Exactly
in line.
right.
You are wrong.
I didn't say it was out of line. I said you've clearly talked about it.
Well, that's not, what you're saying is that this was a coordinated effort. That's entirely different.
Okay. I believe that your comments and Mrs. Marcus's comments were a coordinated effort, but that's just my opinion.
It is your opinion and only that.
My opinion was strictly mine. Okay, let's call for the question. I think we're ready to call for the question. I will start with Amanda. Mrs. Mrs. Stern,
Yes.
Mr. Margot,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker, Mary Wells.
I think Tristan is next.
No, you are.
Okay, yeah, I vote no.
Tristan Walker.
Yes.
Mrs. Marcus is a no. Please let it reflect on the board that this was a no vote, a yes vote, and it was a 3-2. And it was with the sitting board on tonight's April 8th, 2021 session. Okay?
I'd also like the
for
minutes to reflect that when we took the vote on the agenda, that Mrs. Wells was not in picture or in audio. So that should reflect only 3 board members.
I asked that we could take.
I'm sorry,
a
4,
5-minute
not 5.
bathroom breaks, and apparently you didn't hear me. I was
I'm not
surprised.
judging it. I'm just saying that the vote was asked for, it was called for when you were neither on audio nor video. So that's
I'm
4.
sorry, Mary, I did not see that. Sorry. I did not see that.
Before we went to the open session, I asked if we could take a bathroom break,
Oh, I did not hear you. I'm sorry.
which is why I left the meeting.
Oh. I did not know
Just
that.
want the minutes to reflect correctly.
Okay, that is the end of the meeting. No further business. The meeting is closed. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Night, everyone.